He was about to sign away his soul for a billion-dollar contract, but instead, he snapped the pen in half. Who knew that a paper cup of spilled coffee and a stranger's trembling voice in Arabic could stop an empire in its tracks? Karim al-Mansouri had always been taught that men like him had no right to doubt. Heir to a dynasty built on steel, oil, and prestige, he was expected to obey family, uphold tradition, and never allow weakness to shine through his polished armor. Weakness was a word his father spat like venom, his mother silenced with prayer, and his older brothers weaponized in every boardroom. Yet in this very moment, standing in a skyscraper surrounded by lawyers, his chest tightened with the suffocating weight of decisions made not for him, but through him. On the other side of the office door, a delivery man shuffled nervously, his presence barely acknowledged in the polished corridors of wealth. His name was David Johnson. To the executives, he was invisible, just another worker in cheap sneakers carrying bags that smelled faintly of lamb shawarma and falafel. But Karim noticed the sweat on his brow, the way his hands trembled slightly as he adjusted the paper receipt, the scar on his knuckle that spoke of fights too early in life. He noticed because something in David's eyes was not invisible at all. It was defiance, quiet but unyielding, a look Karim had never dared to wear in front of his father. The pen Karim had broken lay in two useless shards on the marble table, and his brothers shifted impatiently. "Karim," barked Omar, the eldest, his voice low with warning. "We do not keep partners waiting. Sign it. This is history for our family. Do not ruin it with your—" He did not finish, but the word hung there like a blade. Weakness. Karim was about to respond, perhaps even yield, when David spoke. The sound cracked the room like thunder. "Salam alaikum," David said softly in perfect Arabic, his voice trembling but clear, his accent flawless, carrying the cadence of Karim's homeland, not the city streets. Every head turned. Karim's brothers frowned, their smug confidence faltering. His mother, who had been silently praying in the corner, froze with her lips parted. The executives, mostly Western, looked at each other with confusion, sensing only that something unorthodox was unfolding. Karim's eyes snapped to David, disbelief coursing through his veins. This man, this delivery worker with dark skin that had so often been the excuse for derision in Karim's family's private conversations, had just pierced the heart of their identity with a simple greeting. "Wa alaikum salam," Karim replied before he could think, the words leaving him raw, vulnerable. David stepped forward, his grip tightening on the receipt. "I wasn't supposed to speak," he admitted in English now, his voice steadying. "But I need to, because I see a man about to destroy himself for the approval of people who will never love him the way he deserves." The room went silent. Omar stood abruptly, his chair scraping the marble like a gunshot. "Who are you to speak here?" he thundered, his face flushed with fury. "You are a delivery boy. Get out before I call security." David's jaw tightened, but his eyes did not waver. "Call them. I'll leave. But not before I say this." He looked directly at Karim. "You don't have to live like this. You don't have to hide. Not your heart, not your truth. I know what it's like to be hated for what you are." The words landed like fire in Karim's chest. For a moment he could not breathe. All his life he had buried feelings under sand and stone, convinced that attraction to men was a curse, a poison he must starve until it killed him. He had been betrothed to a woman from a noble family, a political alliance disguised as marriage, with love nowhere in sight. And yet here was this man, a stranger, bearing his truth in front of an empire. Karim's father, who had been silent until now, finally spoke. "Enough," he growled in Arabic, his voice a heavy chain. "This is shame. This filth. Guards." "No," Karim said suddenly, louder than he intended. The words sliced through the air, silencing even his father. It was the first time in his life he had said no to that man. His legs trembled, but he remained standing. David's eyes widened, caught between fear and awe. Karim's heart thundered in his chest as his mind raced. Could he really do this? Could he step into the fire and survive? The billion-dollar contract lay unsigned, the weight of family expectation pressing against his shoulders. But for the first time, Kareem felt something stronger than fear, the faint spark of freedom. David swallowed hard. Then, almost recklessly, he added the words that would change everything. "I love you." Gasps erupted around the room. Kareem's mother clutched her veil. Omar cursed under his breath, and the executives shifted uncomfortably, sensing scandal beyond repair. Kareem froze, staring at the man before him, who now seemed to glow with an unshakable courage Kareem had never known. He wanted to laugh at the absurdity of it, to cry at the impossibility, to scream at the injustice. But more than anything, he wanted to live. And maybe, just maybe, to love. His father's voice was a storm, booming across the room. "Out! Both of you! You shame us! You spit on your bloodline!" Yet for once, Kareem did not obey. His hand, trembling but resolute, reached toward David. The billion-dollar contract slipped from the table, fluttering to the marble floor like a broken promise. The silence after Kareem's hand reached for David was not silence at all. It was thunder buried in the chests of everyone in that room. His brothers stood frozen, as if time had betrayed them. The executives' hungry vultures of profit exchanged cautious glances, calculating the risk of scandal against the taste of billions. And his father's eyes burned like oil set aflame, dark and consuming, a lifetime of power now being challenged by his youngest son. Kareem's hand trembled, suspended in midair, not yet touching David's. He had never defied his father like this. Never once. His entire life had been a meticulous performance. The loyal son, the dutiful brother, the immaculate heir. Yet in this moment all of it cracked like glass, and the shards cut deep. David didn't move. He stood tall, his jaw clenched, eyes steady on Kareem's. He didn't try to grab Kareem's hand, didn't try to rescue him from the abyss. He simply waited. And in that stillness, Kareem realized something profound. No one could save him except himself. His hand closed the distance. Fingers brushed against David's callous skin, rough from work, honest in a way Kareem's manicured life had never known. The contact was electric, a rebellion written not in words but in touch. Gasps erupted again, his mother whispering frantic prayers under her breath. Omar's fists slamming the table in rage. "This is madness," Omar shouted. "You destroy us all for a servant." Kareem's chest heaved. "He is not a servant. He is a man." And the words caught in his throat, but he forced them out. "And I am tired of living in chains." His father stepped forward, towering, a mountain of fury wrapped in silk and tradition. "You disgrace us before the world. You throw away your future for filth. Do you think the world will honor you for this? No, they will spit on you. They will spit on him. And when they are done, you will crawl back to us, broken." Kareem's voice cracked, but he did not lower his gaze. "Maybe, but at least I will have chosen my life, not lived yours." The room spun with chaos, executives murmuring about public relations disasters, lawyers whispering about breach of trust, his brothers barking orders for guards. But none of it mattered. Kareem pulled David closer, shielding him from the storm of fury. "Go," Kareem whispered to him. "Leave before they," but David shook his head. "No, I've run enough in my life. Not this time." Security guards appeared at the door, uncertainty flickering in their eyes as they weighed loyalty to power against the spectacle unfolding before them. For a moment, no one moved. Then, Kareem's father barked an order in Arabic so sharp it sliced the air. The guards stepped forward. Kareem braced himself, but David lifted his chin and spoke again in flawless Arabic, his voice carrying the weight of generations who had been silenced. "I am not afraid of you. I have faced hatred my entire life. My skin has been called a curse. My love has been called a sin. But still I am here. Still I breathe. Still I love. You can try to crush me, but you cannot erase me." The guards hesitated. Something about David's defiance unsettled them, as if his words carried a truth larger than any paycheck. Kareem felt heat rise in his chest, not shame, not fear, but pride. Pride in this man who stood unbowed in the face of his father's empire. "Enough," Karim said again, this time with a force that surprised even him. He stepped in front of David, placing himself between the guards and the man who had just risked everything for honesty. "If you touch him, you will have to go through me. And I swear to God, I will never forgive you." The room held its breath. For the first time in his life, Karim saw doubt flicker in his father's eyes. Just a flicker, but it was there. It was all he needed. The contract on the floor was forgotten, inkless and meaningless. The true war was here, in this room, in this family. Omar sneered. "You are pathetic. You choose lust over legacy." Karim met his brother's eyes. "No, I choose love over fear." David's hand tightened on his, steadying him. The moment stretched until it broke with the sharp slam of Karim's father's cane against the floor. "Out!" he roared. "You are no son of mine. Get out of my sight before I curse the day you were born." The words sliced Karim open, but instead of bleeding, he felt strangely free. The chains had been cut, even if it meant exile. He squeezed David's hand. "Then I am already gone." Together, they turned and walked toward the door. The guards did not move. Perhaps they were afraid, perhaps they were confused, or perhaps deep down they knew this moment was larger than orders. As Karim and David stepped out into the hallway, the heavy doors closing behind them, Karim's heart pounded with terror and exhilaration. For the first time, he was no longer just his father's son. He was his own man. But freedom came with a cost. The days that followed were chaos. News spread like wildfire. Scandals splashed across headlines. Whispers of betrayal in business circles. Speculation about Karim's fall from grace. His family cut him off entirely. Accounts frozen, apartments seized. His name dragged through the mud in tabloids fueled by both homophobia and racism. But through it all, David was there. David, who worked double shifts to pay rent when Karim's fortune vanished overnight. David, who reminded him that dignity was worth more than diamonds. David, who held him when the world felt too heavy to bear. Yet Karim struggled. Nights were haunted by guilt and doubt. Had he doomed them both? Was love worth the wreckage of his family's empire? The weight of legacy did not vanish overnight. One evening, sitting on the worn couch of David's small apartment, Karim broke. "Maybe they're right," he whispered, staring at the cracked ceiling. "Maybe I'm weak. Maybe I don't belong anywhere. Without them, who am I?" David placed a hand on his chest. "You're Karim, not the empire, not the billions, just you. And that's enough." Karim's eyes stung. "But I don't know how to live like this." David's smile was soft but firm. "Then we'll learn. Together." It wasn't easy. Every day was a battle against prejudice. Whispers from neighbors, stares on the subway. To some, Karim was a fallen prince. To others, David was an interloper who had corrupted him. Racism and homophobia collided in venomous ways, making their love a lightning rod for hatred. Yet within that storm, their bond grew stronger. Karim learned the language of ordinary life: budgeting groceries, taking the bus, fixing a leaking sink. David learned the language of Karim's grief-silent nights, sudden tears, the ache of a family severed. And together they built something fragile but real. Months passed. Then one day a letter arrived. Not from his father, not from his brothers, but from his mother. Karim's hands shook as he opened it, the paper smelling faintly of jasmine, the handwriting delicate yet firm. "My son, I have prayed for you every night. I cannot defy your father, but I cannot hate you either. I see your heart in the news, in the fire of your defiance. I see the man you are becoming. And though the world may scorn you, know this: a mother's love does not vanish." Karim wept as he read it, David's arms around him. It was not reconciliation, not yet, but it was a crack in the wall, a sliver of hope, and hope was enough to keep fighting. Karim stood, wiping his tears. "I don't want to hide anymore. I don't want to just survive. I want to live openly. With you." David kissed his forehead. "Then let's live." They began small hand in public, no longer caring who stared, speaking openly about love when asked, sharing their story with others who needed courage. Slowly, they became symbols of something larger than themselves. Not just scandal, not just rebellion, but resilience. And though Kareem still dreamed of the day his father's eyes would soften, he no longer waited for permission to exist. He already existed. He already loved. And that, at last, was enough. Each article was sharper than a dagger. Each photo, each video clip replayed endlessly, painted them as spectacle instead of human beings. On television, Kareem saw pundits argue about his life as if he were a theory, not a man. On the streets, he felt the whispers and the stares, some filled with curiosity, others with venom. The cruelty wasn't limited to him. David bore the brunt of it in ways Kareem had feared but hadn't fully grasped. Strangers spat slurs at him on the subway. A neighbor muttered, "Homewrecker," under his breath. Even at work, deliveries became hostile encounters, doors slammed in his face. Insults thrown as if he were a punching bag for a world too afraid to see him as human. One night, David returned home with a split lip, the faint trace of blood still clinging to his mouth. Kareem's heart seized. What happened? David shrugged, brushing it off. Some guys didn't like the way I looked at my own reflection in the train window. Kareem trembled with rage. This is because of me. If you weren't with me, you wouldn't. David silenced him with a look. Don't you dare. This isn't your fault. This is hate. And hate belongs to them, not us. But still, Kareem couldn't shake the guilt. He had lost wealth, power, status. But David was losing safety, peace, and dignity, all because of loving him. The weight gnawed at his soul. The tension built until one evening when Kareem's phone rang. The caller ID froze his blood. Omar. His brother's voice crackled through the line, heavy with disdain. Our father is ill. He asks for you. Kareem's heart clenched. He asks? Or you order? A pause. Then, softer, almost reluctant. He asks. Kareem could barely breathe. His father, the man who had disowned him, cursed his name, vowed never to see him again, was asking. Against every instinct, against the ache of old wounds, Kareem agreed. David went with him. The mansion loomed like a cathedral of judgment, its marble walls echoing with the footsteps of generations who had never known rebellion. As they entered, Kareem felt small again, a boy walking into a lion's den. His mother met them at the door. Her eyes softened at the sight of him, but when she saw David, hesitation flickered across her face. Still, she did not turn him away. That alone was a miracle. Your father waits, she whispered. They entered the grand bedroom where the patriarch lay propped against silk pillows, frail but unbowed. His once booming voice was now gravel, his body thinner, but his eyes still burned with iron. So, his father rasped, the prodigal son returns, and brings his corruption with him. Kareem flinched, but David stood firm, silent. Why did you call me? Kareem asked, his voice taut. His father coughed, then spat the words like poison. Because blood is blood. Even a disgrace remains my son. And because I will not leave this world without seeing if there is anything left of the man I raised. Kareem's hands shook, anger and longing colliding. You raised a shadow. You raised fear. You raised silence. His father's eyes narrowed. And what are you now? Free? No. You are nothing. No money. No honor. Only shame. David stepped forward before Kareem could respond. His voice was steady, respectful but unyielding. He is not nothing. He is more than what you ever allowed him to be. And if you cannot see that, then it is you who has nothing. The room froze. No one had ever spoken to the patriarch like that. Kareem's heart hammered, terrified of what might come next. But his father did not erupt. He only stared at David, eyes sharp, searching, as if trying to decipher the mystery of this man who dared speak. Finally, he turned back to Kareem. You choose him over us. Kareem's throat tightened. I choose myself. And yes, I choose him too. Because he sees me. The me you never allowed. Silence fell heavy. The patriarch closed his eyes, his breathing ragged. When he opened them again, his voice was weaker, but the venom remained. Then go. Leave me to die without a son. The words shattered Karim, but this time he did not collapse. He nodded, tears burning but unfallen. Then I will leave. But remember this, I am your son, whether you claim me or not. And one day, you will see that love is not shame. He turned to go, David at his side. His mother reached for his hand briefly, squeezing it, her eyes wet with unspoken words. It was the only fragment of warmth in that house. They left, hearts heavy, but a strange relief washed over Karim. He had faced the lion and survived. For the first time, he realized his father's power was not infinite, could not break him anymore. Yet the world outside was no kinder. Their story had gone global, sparking debates in talk shows, sermons, and social media feeds. Some praised Karim for bravery. Others hurled hatred. But in the shadows of hostility, something unexpected began to grow. Letters arrived, hundreds at first, then thousands. From young men in Cairo who dared not speak their truth. From women in Beirut who had been cast out for loving each other. From black immigrants in Paris who knew the sting of prejudice. From fathers who admitted they feared becoming like Karim's. And from mothers who whispered, "Thank you for showing us how to love." Karim read them with trembling hands, tears blurring the ink. David read them too, his eyes shining with the same defiance that had once cracked a boardroom in half. "See," David murmured one night as they sat surrounded by letters. "We're not alone. We never were." Karim's chest swelled. For the first time, his pain felt like it had purpose. But with purpose came danger. Hate groups organized protests outside David's workplace. Threatening notes slipped under their apartment door. One evening, as they returned home, a brick crashed through the window, shattering glass across the living room. Karim pulled David close, heart pounding. Fear was real. Danger was real. Yet neither of them wavered. "They want us silent," David said, his voice firm. "We can't give them that." Karim nodded, resolve hardening. "Then we speak louder." Together, they began attending rallies, speaking on panels, sharing their story not as victims but as survivors, as lovers, as fighters for a world that could be better. Cameras no longer captured scandal but testimony. Their truth became a weapon against lies. Of course, not everyone changed. Karim's brothers remained cold, distant, their empire thriving without him. His father's health declined further, word reaching him through whispers and letters from his mother. Still, no reconciliation came. And yet, Karim no longer lived waiting for it. He built something new. He and David built it together. Their love was no longer just a rebellion. It was a beacon. And though the world still raged, they had each other, unshakable, unbroken. But the question lingered like smoke in the night. Could love ever bridge the chasm of blood and tradition? Karim didn't know, but he carried hope like a flame cupped in his hands, fragile yet enduring. The night was heavy with rain when the call came. Karim almost didn't answer, thinking it was another journalist fishing for scandal, another relative spitting venom. But the voice on the line stopped his breath. It was his mother. "Your father is dying," she said, her voice trembling like glass about to shatter. He asks for you." Karim sat in silence, torn between the ache of abandonment and the tug of blood that no disowning could sever. David, sitting across from him, watched quietly, his hand reaching out. "You don't owe him anything," David whispered. But Karim shook his head, eyes burning. "I owe myself the chance to know if there is anything left. Anything human." They drove through the storm, streets glistening like black mirrors. The mansion loomed as it had before, cold and imposing. But this time Karim walked in with David at his side. No longer a shadow, no longer a boy desperate for approval. Servants glanced at them with wary eyes, some with pity, some with disdain, but none dared stop them. His mother met them at the foot of the stairs. Her veil was soaked with tears, but her gaze softened when it landed on David. Without a word, she nodded, a silent blessing. The bedroom smelled of incense and medicine, the air thick with finality. His father lay frail, barely recognizable, his once thunderous presence reduced to fragile breaths and eyes dulled by pain. Yet even in weakness, the weight of his authority lingered. Kareem stepped closer, his chest tight. For years he had dreamed of this moment, imagined confrontations, reconciliations, words spoken and words withheld. Now all he felt was the ache of time running out. His father's eyes flickered open, struggling to focus. His voice was little more than a whisper. "You came." Kareem nodded, swallowing hard. "Yes, I came." His father's gaze shifted to David, standing steady at Kareem's side. A shadow of disgust crossed his face. Then something else, something Kareem had never seen before. Fear. Or maybe recognition. "You still shame us," his father rasped. Kareem's jaw clenched, but his voice was calm. "I live truth, not shame." Silence stretched, broken only by the rattle of his father's breath. Then, unexpectedly, his father's eyes softened, if only for a fleeting second. "Do you love him?" The question pierced Kareem like an arrow. He glanced at David, whose eyes held steady with a quiet strength that had carried him through every storm. Kareem turned back, his voice unwavering. "Yes, with everything I am." His father closed his eyes, a shuddering sigh escaping. His lips moved slowly, painfully. Then, "May God have mercy." Those were his last words. The room grew still. Kareem stood frozen, waiting for hatred, waiting for a curse. But none came, only silence, heavy and final. He had not been blessed, but neither had he been damned. And in that silence, there was something that felt almost like release. His mother wept quietly, clutching her rosary. She looked at Kareem, then at David. Her voice was soft, cracked but firm. "He could not love you the way you needed, but I will not lose you too." She reached for Kareem's hand, then, after a trembling pause, reached for David's as well. The three of them stood together in a fragile triangle of grief and fragile hope. It was not reconciliation. It was not full acceptance. But it was a beginning, and that, Kareem realized, was enough. The funeral was a spectacle. Dignitaries, businessmen, imams, politicians all gathered to honor the patriarch. Kareem was expected to stand apart, shunned by many, pitted by others. Whispers followed him like shadows. But David stood with him, hands steady on his back, presence unyielding. For every glare, there was a hidden nod of respect, a quiet acknowledgement from those too afraid to speak publicly but who saw courage in their defiance. Among the mourners, a young man approached them in secret, his voice trembling. "Thank you," he whispered. "Because of you, I told my family. They did not kill me. They did not bless me either. But I live." Tears pricked Kareem's eyes. He squeezed the young man's shoulder. "Live. That is the victory." After the funeral, life did not magically mend. Kareem was still cut off from the empire, his brothers hostile, the world divided about his choices. But something inside him had shifted. He no longer felt like a fugitive from his own blood. He felt like a man who had faced the storm and still stood. David noticed it too. One evening, as they sat on their worn couch, David smiled. "You've stopped flinching when the phone rings." Kareem laughed softly, realizing it was true. The fear had loosened its grip. Together, they built a new rhythm. Kareem started working with grassroots organizations, using his education and connections to advocate for LGBTQ+ rights in immigrant and religious communities. David continued his delivery job but soon found himself mentoring young men who, like him, had grown up fighting prejudice at every corner. Their apartment became a sanctuary, walls lined with letters from strangers around the world, a kitchen table scarred by endless conversations about hope, a windowsill holding 2 coffee mugs side by side every morning. Months turned into a year. One day, as they walked hand in hand through the city, they passed a mural painted across an old brick wall. It showed 2 men, one in a suit, one in work clothes, standing side by side, hands clasped, faces defiant. Above them, the words, "Love is the deal that cannot be broken." Kareem stopped, staring at it in awe. David chuckled. "Looks familiar." Kareem's throat tightened. "It's us." David nodded. "It's everyone like us." Strangers stopped to take photos, some smiling, some frowning, but all acknowledging the image. And in that moment, Kareem realized something powerful. Their love had become larger than them. It had become a symbol, a story whispered in corners and shouted in rallies. That night, Kareem stood by the window, watching the city lights shimmer like stars caught in glass. David wrapped his arms around him from behind, chin resting on his shoulder. "Do you regret it?" David asked softly. Kareem turned, meeting his gaze. Every day was hard. Every step was painful. But regret. He shook his head, voice breaking into a smile. "Never, because it led me here. To you." David kissed him, slow and steady, sealing not just a promise but a truth that no contract, no family decree, no prejudice could erase. The future remained uncertain. The world was still cruel. His family might never fully embrace him. But Kareem had chosen love, and in doing so had chosen life. And as he stood in David's arms, the city glowing around them, he felt something he had never truly known before. Freedom. Thank you for listening. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe to follow the next stories.